Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the healing art of presence. My name is Holly Taylor. I am a registered nurse and a board-certified holistic nurse, and I'm also the owner and CEO of the Holistic Nurse Academy. And I am super excited to be able to share this presentation to you for free in hopes that it can help you on your holistic journey and just maybe renew your sense of excitement for what you're doing as a nurse, as a healthcare provider, to bring back that joy if it's lacking or missing, or just if you're looking for something to enhance your practice. So thank you so much for joining this presentation today and taking the time out. If you're here, that means you are a learner, someone who loves to just keep growing and learning, and that's how I am. So I'm excited to share this space together. As I have been observing my own journey and the current state of nursing today and healthcare, I can't help but notice that we're in the midst of something changing, big changing. And it's something I noticed when I started out 15 years ago, that there was a disconnect between what I wanted to do and what I could do. And I really feel strongly that we're shape-shifting and we're moving into a different direction. And what I'm hopeful of, and what I believe that anyone watching this presentation can be a part of, is this change to making healing presence the priority before the task, before anything else we do with our patients, that who they are, where we're at, what we're doing with them, how we're interacting with them, making them feel like they're seen and heard is way more important than what we have to accomplish that day. And I know right now our current system doesn't allow for that a whole lot. If you are allowed that space, it's because you've created it and you're working very hard at it. So what I'm envisioning is that we work together to make this change happen so that the priorities get switched and that the patient is the priority and that we have the emotional reserve and we have the emotional capacity to show up for them because we're being taken care of as well. So maybe as you have hopefully explored some of our website, you saw our introductory video that just explains what we do here at the Academy and why we're so passionate about it. And it starts for me in nursing school all those 15 years ago when we were learning all the things about, starting IVs, inserting a Foley catheter, administering medications, all the tasks that we were able to accomplish. And what we were shown is, we see a problem, we perform a task, and it produces an outcome. And while that's kind of traditional a way of educating us, what I found disconnected from was that part where we got to sit down and hold our patient's hand and really be present with them while they're suffering or while they're in struggle or whatever emotion they're feeling. Maybe it's joy even, but just being able to sit with them and be present with that moment. And right now, in most cases, we have so much that is demanding our time and energy that we aren't able to give it that full attention unless we really, really work hard at it or we create a space where that's possible. And I've worked really hard at creating a space where that's possible because I couldn't do it in the traditional sense. So whatever resonates with you, I hope you take it forward and that it's something that you can use in your own practice as a nurse or healthcare provider because it's so important. So let's get going on this presentation. We're just going to start out with our purpose, objectives, and definitions. And we're going to, throughout the process of this presentation, we're going to define healing presence. We're going to discuss healing presence and practices. We will review evidence-based research on ways to become more present. and we're going to practice gratitude and deep listening. So we're going to start with a question. And this question has a 50-50 chance for you to get it right. So good news. I'm going to ask the question, which hemisphere of our brain controls our present mind, meaning being right here, right now? Which hemisphere? The answer to this question, if you didn't already know, is the right side of the brain. This is our seat of inner peace. The right side of our brain controls presence, acting as our witness or observer, and holds our ability to experience deep inner peace. And as you read through the points that are on the slide, we have the observer, the witness, and you might be hearing this term if you have done some meditation work. And they talk about the seat of the observer. And it's just having that non-attachment to what's going on, and you're just watching it almost like a movie. And there's just this sense of not reacting or not getting too involved. And you're just watching the scenes as they pass. So when you're doing that practice, you're in the right side of your brain. And it causes, it can be when you are on the right side of your brain, you'll be in deep serenity, you have your mindful connection, and your emotional resonance. So where it says deep serenity, it says connected to the right brain's holistic processing, it facilitates access to profound states of calm and inner tranquility. Okay, so that's why the right side of our brain seems like a beautiful place to live in, and is good for emotional presence. But we're going to talk more about this as we go on. I'm just introducing these concepts. So next question is, which hemisphere of our brain controls our ego? And if you knew the right answer for the first question, then you'll know this answer for the next question. And it's 50-50, but really it's 100% chance you'll get it right because we already went over the first question. So this side of our brain that controls the ego is the left side of our brain. The ego control center is the left hemisphere and the primary seat of the ego, governing our sense of self, analytical thinking, and the narrative we create about our lives. If you lose the perception of your left brain, you also lose what is known as the ego. So when we hear the word ego, I think there can be lots of interpretations of what it means. But ego, as far as I understand it and know it, it's not so much about the vanity of things, it's being attached. So we talked about on the right side of our brain not being attached. On the left brain, you're attached. So if you think that you are your hands and your feet, and you think that you are your car or your house, and those things are really important to you because they define who you are, when you lose them, then you have a crisis. So it's very egocentric to think that you are something that you're not. Whereas in the right side of your brain, you're just the observer. So you're not attached to any of those things that they create who you are as a person, which is really important to our healing presence and understanding that most of us in healthcare and in doing what we do, we are using a lot of our left brain, even though we can have that right brain working and be creative. It can also cause some problems in terms of being in our left brain can cause some problems in terms of our presence. So we need both, and we need to live in both. The goal of healing presence is essentially to let go of the ego or the need to be right over identification with self or fear. So the opposite of fear is love. So when we are in our ego, we are in a sense of fear. And we want to move towards that sense of love. And so sometimes when a patient has a question for us or needs something from us or something to that effect, and we don't feel like Either we don't know the answer, which could be fearful, or we don't feel like they're doing what we told them. So then we get, I'm right, you're wrong. Why aren't you listening to me? We can get into kind of that battle of, well, I've gone to school and I've learned all these things, and this is what I was told. How come you're not doing them? So it can just kind of lead into this struggle when we get into that side of our brain if we're not careful. So with the goal of presence is to let go of that ego, that need to be right. And it is a skill to be learned over time, and it must be cultivated. And honestly, I consider this my most important skill since I really understood the power of it. And I'm just going to read this definition and then I'll get into why I consider it my most important skill. Healing presence is a constellation of personal qualities, relational skills, and professional behaviors that can have a transformational influence on individuals, groups, and communities. Healing presence is an antecedent to optimal health and healthcare interventions. It transcends technical skill and supports the innate wholeness of individuals and their capacity to heal themselves. The qualities, skills, and behaviors that make up healing presence can be intentionally cultivated through specific practices. So, what does it mean to have a healing presence? The capacity to hold a healing space for another with your calm, centered state of being, attuning to the client or patient, meeting them where they are at. Also, healing presence is the recognition that healing can take place in the absence of a cure. So, it was as was taking the courses to become board certified as a holistic nurse that I was introduced to this idea that your presence can heal. And for me, it was a really a light bulb moment where I was like, wow, like all I have to do is take care of me and my own presence and cultivate that. And that alone, take away all my knowledge, take away all my skills. If I can just show up 100% in my authentic self with presence, that can be healing for people. And I was blown away with that by that concept. And so I was just curious, this is a good time to reflect on what are some ways you have seen this in your own practice or your personal life, where someone's been really present for you, or you've been present for someone and it moved the needle in a meaningful way. A really simple example for me is when, I had some back issues and I was having them for quite a while. It required me to go in for one of those procedures where, you have to have an x-ray and a team of people sticking needles in your back to give you the shots that will help with the pain. So the cortisone injections. And it's not pleasant. It's not the worst thing you can experience, but it's not pleasant. And it takes, a room full of people, the doctor and the nurse and, a few other technicians that are in there. And I just was so amazed by how I was treated in that process, especially with this idea of, I've been studying presence, I've been working on it. And so I had this new set of eyes where I was just really impressed by, I was asked, hey, we listen to music in here. What do you like to listen to? And making sure that it was music I liked. And then, are you comfortable? Is there anything we do to accommodate you? And as I was getting the injections, which were very unpleasant, I had a nurse patting me on the shoulder, telling me I was doing a good job and you were almost done. And then once the procedure was over, the doctor himself walked me down the hall to um, meet back with my husband where he was. And it was just this really patient-centered experience. And I just thought, wow, I just was affected by it. And so on something kind of minor and routine, if it had that much of an impression on me, I just think of the more intense settings where that modality and that presence is kept, how impactful that can be for people. And I was just impressed the whole team was on board, because sometimes, you get one or two people who get it, but not the whole team. So I know that that was like from the top down, a core value of theirs. I want to talk about Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. She's the author of the book, My Stroke of Insight, a brain scientist's personal journey. She is a neuroanatomist who, I believe she was in her 30s. Correct, I apologize if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure she was in her 30s, and she had a massive stroke. And because she was a neuroanatomist, she basically knew what was going on, and her story's fascinating, and I love listening to her speak. So when you get a minute, look her up. She has a TED Talk. Her book is really amazing, and she has some other interviews. If I wasn't going to run into copyright issues, I would have uploaded an interview with Oprah Winfrey where she talks about some of the principles I'm going to share. But it took her 8 years to fully recover from her stroke. And her whole journey was about the left side of her brain basically was affected by the stroke. So all she had was the right side of her brain. And it made her unable to, like, she was unable to use language. So all she could interpret was energy. And this became her observation through the whole process, is that she could tell when healthcare providers, when they came to her aid for whatever reason during her healing journey, they were either bringing her energy or taking away energy. And that was her big takeaway, is we all have responsibility to check our energy and be responsible for the energy we're bringing to our patients. And because she couldn't speak, all she could do was feel people's energy filled. So I think at one point her mom was kind of guarding, like, you can come in, you can't come in, because she could tell which ones were taking away and taking or bringing to her what she needed in order to heal, right? So basically it's not you're right or you're good, you're bad. It's like, I need energy. I can't be around people who are taking energy from me. I'm trying to heal and I need energy. She talks about how her mom, she had totally forgotten what a mom was, but everyone kept saying, your mom's coming to visit you. Your mom's coming to visit you. Although she uses a different term for mom, and I'm forgetting it at the moment. But, Gigi, she said, Gigi's coming to visit. Gigi's coming to visit. Well, Gigi was her mom. And she's like, well, what's the big deal? She's kind of thinking, what's the big deal? Well, she talks about how her mom laid down next to her and held her and just was like this warm, healing energy. And she was like, oh, this is what a Gigi is. Oh, I like this. Like, I want this to stay. This is what a Gigi is. So it's that idea that when we enter a room, that we're leaving behind whatever it is that just happened. And we're checking ourselves. We're taking a deep breath. We're grounding ourselves. We don't have a whole lot of time to do that. So that's why it takes practice. But just recentering, regrounding, and knowing that the next person needs our full attention. And a lot of times we get so caught up. I'm seeing this more and more because of what's demanded of us. Just like people will walk into a room and not even acknowledge somebody by looking in the eyes. They just go straight to the computer, type things, scan things. Here you go, gotta go. I had a friend say that his wife was going through chemotherapy and had been at the hospital. And he goes, I don't remember one person just consciously connecting with my wife through touch. Like there was no pats on the shoulder or leg and it wasn't necessarily a complaint, but he was just kind of like taken aback by it. And it's not like she was under any restrictions that she couldn't have that touch or connection. You just could tell people were busy and spread thin. And so it's definitely coming at a price. And it's something that left an impression on him because he said something to me, right? So let's just hold that concept, be responsible for the energy you bring, and then study her work. She's Jill Bolte Taylor. She's amazing. So kind of going along a little bit further with this healing presence, what it forces us to do is go from fixing to serving. And it's an evolution. So when we're in the energy of fixing, we think things are broken. So it's broken and I need to fix it. And that is the work of the ego. When we go into, oh, I want to help people, it's because we're seeing a weakness where we think that we need to be the strength in the situation. You're seeing life as weak, and that is also the work of the ego. So, you know, it's kind of like, oh, that poor guy needs my help. Well, when you say it like that, that's not very empowering to the person that you're trying to help. I remember someone telling me they had changed their language to, I hope all is well, to I trust all is well, because they are inserting more of that service mind of, I'm not worried, I'm not fearful, I'm in trust for you, which I just really like that idea. So when we're in the work of the soul, that's when we're in service. And we see life as whole, and that is the work of the soul. So let me just reiterate that. Helping, fixing, and serving represent three different ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. When you serve, you see life as whole. Fixing and helping may be the work of the ego, and service the work of the soul. And that's by Rachel Remen. So that's just one way to start looking at, how do I go from fixing or helping to service? How do I evolve beyond this, I'm the person that rescues all the wounded birds, to I see you as a whole, complete person, and I'm going to help you help yourself and engage with you in a way that makes us both feel whole and complete. And that I see you as you, and not your disease, not your ailment, not your broken leg. Like we are all so much more than our illness, right? So it's helping people remember that there's so much more beyond what they're going through medically. So healing practice is the little things, right? It's all the little things that add up to create presence in a healing practice. So it starts with something as little as setting an intention. You might hold the intention every day that you want to connect with people more, and it might still be a struggle, and that's okay, because your intention will shift things eventually. You just have to be relentless in the pursuit. So set an intention to be present. A good mantra for that, or statement for that: I am here for the greater good of this person. I set aside my own concerns and worries, and I am fully present to the here and now. So use that as your mantra, use that as your statement every day, to help you get intentional about being present. Take a deep breath and ground. What does that mean? It means that you are going from your head to your feet. You are grounded. You're not just your head. You're not just your thoughts. You're not just your ability to multitask. As parents, people will learn, and we talk about that kids just want your kids just want you. They just want your presence. They don't want you to be everywhere and doing everything and a million things. They just want you to be there. And that's the same with our patients. So what do we have to do to take care of ourselves and ground? Grounding provides the nurse or the healthcare provider with a steady physical psychological, and energetic platform in which to anchor the communication process. So, if you've ever interacted with someone that you admire, they most likely have a sense of groundedness to them. They most likely have a sense of calm, even when things are stressful. That became kind of my mantra is I am calm in a storm because reactivity was, unfortunately, that was kind of a really easy place for me to go is to be reactive as, just a human being doing life. And I really decided that I wanted to be that calm in the storm. And that has been my personal intention, not just with my patients or clients, but also with my family and friends. So that takes practice. We have to work at it. We have to do things to shift the needle. And um, it's not always easy. It's not always pretty, but it's worth the pursuit, right? So continuing on this journey, we want to make eye contact with people instead of standing over people. See what you can do to eye level. Even if you have to kneel, sit in a chair, sit next to them on the bed, whatever that looks like. Eye contact is really important. Get to eye level, practice looking people, including strangers, in the eye. What is your level of comfort? So try just like whenever you're out and about, start looking strangers in the eye and see how it makes you feel. Like, is it comfortable? Are you feeling like, oh, we're all connected and I see you? And, a lot of times I'll try and do that and people won't look at me back, and that's okay. But I'm practicing that, isn't that interesting? Seat of observer, where it's like, oh, isn't that interesting that they didn't smile? Or um, it's really meaningful when you start practicing and people do connect with you because then you go, oh, they get it too. They have that sense of wanting to connect and presence. And a couple of years ago, my husband and I went to Europe, and I found it really interesting as I was out and about in a whole different, set of countries, just trying to connect with people and smiling where I could and, catching someone's gaze and just saying hi. And yeah, we're all connected, even though we live in different countries or different sides of the world. There's that sense of, I see you, and it's really important to people. Another really important step in this healing practice is validate and listen. So, a lot of times when people give us a problem and we're in fix-it mode, we start giving solutions. And as you live enough life, you start to realize and when people want solutions, they ask for them, but a lot of times people just want to talk it out. So a good place to start instead of in the fix-it mode, and we're in service. So now our service that we're offering is listening. And when we hear them share their difficulty, we can say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Or another way to validate that would be so hard. And what I heard you say was, and just start validating what they're saying. And you're making eye contact while you're doing it, you're listening. And, then that can lead to, and how can I help you? Or what do you need from me? Something these activities have taught me is to listen to my patients more. And so instead of going to problem solving mode, I often will say, what do you think is going on? Like if you just had to guess, give me your best guess of what's going on with you. What do you think that is? And I would say most of the time they have a pretty darn good idea. And you know what? When I drop the ego and I don't think I have to figure it out, and there's not all this fear of like, not that I'm diagnosing them or anything, but I'm helping them problem solve, right? And like, which doctor do you need to go to, or which specialist do you need to see? And when they tell me, oh, I really think I need to get my blood sugars checked. I really do think that I might be sensitive to sugar. Um, then I would say start there. Absolutely start there. And sometimes you'll get a I don't know, but most of the time people will say something where they want to start. And whether they're right or wrong is beyond the, is not the point, although a lot of times they are right versus wrong. Um, it just shows that you're letting them take the lead. You're interested in helping them problem solve, and you're not trying to fix the thing for them, and you're there to assist. So that's really what I've learned in that process. And it takes away all the responsibility of you having to figure it out and that you have to have all the answers. And you turn into more of a resource, and you can educate where you need to educate. But um, it's an interesting practice that I would recommend. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about deep listening. I'm just going to ask you a few questions. How good are you at deep listening? Have you ever practiced deep listening? Are you someone who tends to talk more than listen, or are you an interrupter? Is it hard for you to get through somebody's comments without interrupting them? Do you try and fix the problem, or you just listen? What is an example of a time that someone listened to you deeply, and how did it make you feel? Do you have an example of that? That would be something to reflect on and just think about. I want to share a little story if I can. You've probably heard of the actor Matthew McConaughey. He has a book called Green Lights out, and it's a really good book. It's a fun read. But he has a story on there that I was just like in there that I thought, oh my gosh, this is a perfect example of deep listening. So I just wanted to share it. So McConaughey has a story from early in his career, shortly after the movie A Time to Kill made him a star. And he was struggling with what he calls the excess of fame. He heard about the Monastery of Christ in the Desert, a remote community of Benedictine monks adrift in the wilds of New Mexico with a guest house for anyone who cares to sample the monastic life. A friend dropped him off, and the monks welcomed him in. McConaughey told them he needed to talk to someone. They directed him to a monk named Brother Christian. They say aptly named Brother Christian, which is funny. He says, so Matthew McConaughey says, I confessed to him for hours. I'm feeling like I'm at the bottom of the earth. I'm bawling and snot's coming out of my nose. And what does he say? The only word he says to me after 4 hours of my confessions, he looks me in the eyes and he goes, me too. So interestingly enough, so this monk listened to him, just vent for 4 hours straight. And then he said, me too. So that's excessive. This is an extreme example of deep listening, but it's a good one. So McConaughey says his eyes popped behind dark rimmed glasses. And says, he let me know that I was not the center of the universe. He let me know it was a human condition, what I was going through. And what's interesting about that is the monk didn't say that. Matthew McConaughey came up with that interpretation of the experience all on his own. So that's the power of deep listening and why it's so important. So next, so these are all proven, and there are studies that show that these are ways that do work for bringing presence in. Gratitude being next on the list. We've heard a lot of this, having a gratitude journal. Gratitude is really important, just being in appreciation, which can be really hard when you are in overwhelm and burned out. So if that's where you are and that's what you're feeling, this slide is not meant to make you feel bad in any way or ungrateful in any way. This is just a way to kind of dig yourself out of the hole, and or continue to work on the healing presence as a skill. So ways to feel and express gratitude. You can reflect on positive moments if you have some. Sometimes you have to work really hard to find those. There was a time in my life where I had to work really hard to find all the positives in my life, but um, luckily I feel like I've shifted into a space where that's much easier, but that also came through practice. You can write a thank you note, you can verbally appreciate others, and just have mindful observation. It's also a good practice to have a daily gratitude journal. Um, I know for me, sorry, I need a drink. I know for me, gratitude is the easiest when I am on a hike, kayaking, doing something in nature, just kind of away from it all. All of a sudden, I have this sense of awe for life. And there's something about like getting my heart rate going, and all I can hear is the sound of my heart. And then I look up and I can see what's like, all of a sudden, I can see everything. And for me, that's the easiest way for me to get into gratitude. So, be thinking about like, when do I feel the most grateful? When is it easy for me to get into gratitude? And then work on spending more time in that space if you can. All right, there's a story versus phenomenon that I wanted to talk about a little bit. We won't get deeply into this, but it's just a concept that I wanted to introduce. So we have the story, which is how we choose meaning and interpretation and apply personal filters and values. And then there's the phenomenon, what we observe. Okay, so how this works with healing presence. So people will go through their experience in healthcare. They'll have their medical condition and their medical experience. I worked in hospice for a long time, so that's the easiest place for me to pull from. So they collaboratively this is collaboratively woven into a coherent narrative. Supports movement towards balance and self-actualization. Okay, so there's the story of what happened, and then there's the phenomenon, the direct experience of healing itself, vital for holistic recovery. So this happens a lot when people have bad things happen to them. Then a lot of people will seek meaning in those experiences, or some people will say, I can't see any meaning in this. It's that gap. So you can see that the healing presence is the bridge between those two things that invites sharing and weaving experience into story. So in hospice, I hear a lot of stories about just hospice in general. It was the best or the worst thing. They would recommend it to anyone. They don't know that they could recommend it to everyone, depending on their experience, right? And I talked to a lady who said, oh, hospice was just wonderful. The nurse would say, don't you worry about the details. We'll take care of those so you can just be with your loved one. And then they did as they promised. They showed up, they performed the skills they promised. And because of that, she had a really good experience with her mother being on hospice. And so that nurse showing up in the way that was promised was the bridge to that, right? And what made that experience so healing, not just the fact that they were on hospice. So that's one experience about this story versus phenomenon. So how we create meaning of what happened, our healing presence can be the gap for that, or the bridge to that. Not the gap, the bridge to that gap, excuse me. All right, so I recently came upon a social media influencer who is a nurse, and she is in labor and delivery, and I just love her to death. Her name is Jen Hamilton, and she could really teach a masterclass, honestly, on healing presence. She's so good at it. And she'll often give like scenarios where somebody came in, wasn't using a good healing presence, and then she'll say, well, what about shifting the narrative to this, or what about saying this instead? So, she's never someone to like blast someone and shame and blame. She will just use that information to educate. But what I love about her is she has a practice where when she starts her shift and she meets a new patient, she will say, I'm your nurse for the next 12 hours. And here is my pledge to you, essentially. I don't think she says it just like that, but essentially, she's giving them an outline of how it's going to go. And that's what this slide says. I'm just going to read it with you. But I just think as you're reading this, I hope we're all thinking, what can I do in my own practice to adopt this kind of format where I don't have a ton of time, but I definitely want to start something like this with my patients. Okay, so she says, I am here to be your advocate. I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to believe you. I am here to listen to the things that are important to you and echo them louder to the people who are also taking care of you. I am here to explain things so that you can make decisions you feel good about. I'm here to make sure no one does anything to you, only for you. But also, I want to tell you what I'm not going to do. I am not here to keep secrets from you. And in the back of my mind, if I'm thinking of something that might be a possibility for you, we are going to talk about it early and often. So in case it does happen, and in case it does happen, we are ready for it. And if it doesn't happen, it's just an extra conversation that we had, because there is very little worse for me than running in, telling you something is an emergency when it's been in the back of my head all day long. So that's just an example of like a really easy way, easy, but also like profound way to earn trust, right? To just get in there and let your people know, I'm here for you. This isn't about me. I'm your advocate. And she had mentioned she had walked into someone's room and they just kind of felt a little iffy about her. Like she could tell that they were a little uneasy. And, she said this to her, and the day went on, and she kept her promises, and she did all the things that she stated in this proclamation, essentially. And as the day went on, their relationship improved, and there was a greater sense of connection and meaning. And I just think that in of itself is revolutionary. If we could all take something away from her experience and what she teaches. So I love this example. So we're just in our final thoughts of the presentation. Just remember that presence is inherent, not earned or an added task. So if you're hearing all this and you think, cool story, can't do it, but I think it's a really nice thought, you already have your presence. You already have it within you. You just need to cultivate it. We just get to cultivate it. You don't need to. We get to. So just, I hope you see it as something that you can do easily, and it's not one more thing you have to do, because that would never be my intention by any means. I know nobody needs one more task to complete. Just know that presence is found in the small moments, taking a breath, softening, choosing steadiness. It's a profoundly healing offering to others. So, it should have been taught along with the IV insertion and the Foley cath placement and medications. It is one more tool in the toolbox. It supports you, protects your energy, strengthens resilience, and reconnects with your purpose. And hopefully, above all, that's what it does. It reconnects you to your purpose, that you start to find the joy in what you're doing again, because you have presence, and it's allowing those moments of connectedness. I know for me personally, when I am most present, when I am practicing this the best, I have the most rewarding experiences with my patients, most connected. I hear a lot more gratitude from them. Not that I need that for my ego, but it just is a sign that I'm doing, my practice is working. because there's less struggle, there's less butting of heads because, you know, I'm the trained professional and I know what's best. And that is not at all um, what we're here to do. We have our education for a reason, but it's not to tell people how to live their lives, and um, it's to educate people. It's to give them options. The definition of a holistic nurse, one of the definitions, is to be an option giver. And so um, it's just if we're in that space of giving options, that means we're doing it right. Um, so as I said before, this has been a life-changing um, modality for me to learn, to cultivate. It has progressed over the years. It's not something that you ever stop practicing. And I would just recommend starting somewhere, set an intention, practice listening. So this is your homework. If you want some homework, uh, work on practice listening, making eye contact. Meditation's a great way to start to let go of the ego mind, the need to be right. It's also really good to get yourself out of fight or flight when you're constantly stressed out. Remember taking those deep breaths before you enter a room, before you do your next task. You know, one of the stories I share with kids, because this is a thing that they can understand and grasp, is with animals. I have dogs, so I'm going to use dogs. But with dogs, when they play and they fight and they get aggressive, right after, like immediately after, they shake and sneeze and they get rid of whatever it was that was, you know, irritating them or got them upset, because they were playing and getting aggressive, and they immediately shake it off. And I just think we have a lot to learn in that way. As humans, we tend to hold on to things, we tend to over process things, and it leaves us feeling kind of heavy at the end of the day, and we don't always know what to do with it. So as we start to have more positive interactions and more connected interactions, as we hold space for the human story and let go of fear and don't have to have all the answers and really lean into that, we will not only be better providers, but we will enjoy being in the healthcare field. We will enjoy what we're doing a lot more, and that will be better for everyone overall. So I would love to hear any thoughts you might have about this presentation. Any questions you might have, you can email me at holly@theholisticnurseacademy.com. And I hope you enjoyed this free presentation from the Holistic Nurse Academy. We look forward to working with you and giving our clients and patients more options. Have a great day.